My name is Rachel, and if you think weddings are all about love, flowers, and forever promises, let me tell you something different. A wedding can also be the stage where betrayal takes center spotlight. Mine certainly was. The day that should have been the most sacred, the most beautiful, became the battlefield for a truth so devastating it nearly crushed me. And yet, it also gave me the power to strike back. The morning of my wedding began with sunlight pouring through the curtains. My bridesmaids buzzed around me, fixing my veil, adjusting the lace on my gown, whispering about how perfect everything looked. I tried to soak in the moment, but there was this strange heaviness inside me. A voice I could not silence kept saying something is wrong. Pushed it down. I told myself nerves were normal. After all, this was the day I would marry Brandon, the man I thought I loved, the man I thought I knew. By the time I walked down the aisle, the garden glowed with golden light. Guests smiled, phones snapped photos, and Brandon stood at the altar, looking polished and calm. His best man clapped him on the back. My sister Amelia sat in the front row, hands folded, eyes wide with what looked like joy. She was radiant that day. Too radiant, I thought. The vows went smoothly. We exchanged rings. There were tears, laughter, applause. Everything looked like a fairy tale, until dinner began. The reception was a storm of clinking glasses and loud music. I made the rounds, hugging relatives, smiling at friends, greeting coworkers. Then the band quieted, and someone tapped a microphone. It was Amelia. My sister. Rachel, she said, her voice trembling like she was overcome with emotion. I want to make this day even more special with an announcement. I froze. The crowd leaned in. My maid of honor announcing something at my wedding? I glanced at Brandon. His jaw was tight, his hand stiff around his glass. Amelia put her palm on her stomach and smiled with a glow that wasn't rehearsed. I am pregnant, she declared. The room gasped. Hands clapped, voices shouted congratulations, and a ripple of cheers rose like a wave. But not from me. Because I noticed one thing no one else did. Brandon's reaction. He didn't smile. He didn't clap. His eyes shot to hers like a secret had slipped. A secret he wasn't ready for the world to know. And in that moment, in the middle of my own wedding, I understood. This child might not belong to some faceless boyfriend Amelia had whispered about. It might belong to my husband. The champagne glass shook in my hand. My throat burned. I pasted on a smile, but inside I was screaming. My wedding had just turned into a crime scene. The crime? Betrayal. And I was standing in the middle of it, in a white dress with everyone watching. I didn't collapse. I didn't scream. Instead, I began to plan. Because if Amelia thought she could hijack my day with her little performance, if Brandon thought he could keep his secret buried under flowers and music, they had underestimated me. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a trap. And I was the one who was going to spring it. I raised my glass, forced my voice to steady, and said, "That is quite an announcement, Amelia." The crowd laughed, clapped again, thinking I was happy. But inside, I made a vow stronger than any I had spoken at the altar. Before this night is over, the real father will be revealed. And it won't be me who loses everything. The applause still rang through the garden as Amelia stepped down from the microphone, her hand protectively resting on her stomach like she was already cradling that unborn child. Guests crowded her, asking about the due date, touching her shoulder, smiling with genuine joy. I stood frozen, bouquet trembling in my hand, the bride who suddenly looked like an extra in her own story. Brandon leaned toward me, whispering under the noise, "Don't make a scene, Rachel." His words weren't comforting. They were sharp. A warning. Don't make a scene? My husband had just watched my sister hijack my wedding, and all he could say was that? His face was pale, his jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed him. They darted back to Amelia, then to me, then down to his untouched plate. He wasn't surprised. He was terrified. That was when the truth began to crystallize inside me. Amelia's announcement wasn't random. It wasn't innocent. She hadn't come to share joy. She had come to stake her claim. I forced myself to move. I hugged relatives, posed for photographs, smiled when people said, "Congratulations, Auntie-to-be." Inside, my mind spun faster than the chandeliers above the dance floor. Every smile Amelia gave Brandon burned into my skull. Every nervous twitch of his fingers confirmed it. And then came the worst moment. During the father-daughter dance, Brandon should have been waiting at the edge of the floor, ready to whisk me into his arms. Instead, he was standing near the bar, and Amelia was there with him, their heads tilted close, whispering, her hand brushing his sleeve like they had rehearsed this 1,000 times. I lost my footing mid-step. My father steadied me, whispering, "You all right, sweetheart?" I smiled, but I could barely breathe. The rest of the night blurred. Guests danced, laughed, and clinked glasses. I played the part of the glowing bride, but my insides felt like shattered glass. Brandon kissed me for photos, his lips stiff. Amelia kept shining, telling anyone who would listen how blessed she felt, how she couldn't wait to raise her child with all this love around her. I wanted to scream, but instead I made a silent promise. When the cake was cut and the bouquet was tossed, I slipped away into the bridal suite. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone. I scrolled back through Amelia's social media posts. There were late-night selfies, captions about mystery dinners, vague hints of someone special. None of them named Brandon. But in the corner of one picture, blurry but undeniable, was his watch. The silver watch I had gifted him on his last birthday. The same one he wore every day. My blood went cold. This wasn't speculation anymore. This wasn't paranoia. The pieces fit too perfectly. Her glow, his fear, the silence between them. The baby inside her wasn't just a scandal. It was proof of betrayal. The night ended with sparklers and cheers. Guests waved us off to the honeymoon suite. Brandon slid into the car beside me, smiling weakly, trying to act as though nothing had just detonated in our lives. "Rachel," he said softly, "let's not overthink tonight. Your sister, she has her own problems. We don't need to." I cut him off. "Don't finish that sentence." My voice was ice. He looked at me, startled, but I kept my gaze fixed on the road, because I already knew what he would try to do. Gaslight me, distract me, make me question my own instincts. But I had seen enough. And if Amelia thought she could humiliate me in front of our family, if Brandon thought he could bury this in silence, they were both about to learn that I was not a woman to be erased. When the car stopped, I stepped out, not as a wife in love, but as a strategist. I would not confront him tonight. No, that would give him power. Instead, I would gather proof. Quietly, patiently. Because when my revenge came, it would not be whispered. It would be undeniable. And it would be public. I stood at the hotel window, staring at the city lights, while Brandon pretended to sleep in the bed behind me. My phone buzzed with a notification. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo. Amelia. At a restaurant. Brandon's jacket draped over her chair. I didn't need any more confirmation. The war had begun. And I was going to win. I barely slept that night. Brandon's steady breathing beside me sounded like an insult. Every exhale a reminder of his betrayal. At dawn, I was already dressed, sitting in the corner chair with my phone in hand. That anonymous message haunted me. Who had sent it? Why now? And how did they know where Brandon and Amelia were? The picture replayed in my mind. Amelia glowing under the dim restaurant lights. Brandon's jacket casually draped over her chair as though it belonged there. It was the kind of detail no woman could miss. A jacket wasn't just fabric. It was intimacy. It was care. It was possession. I decided then. If I wanted the truth, I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof that no one could deny. The first step was simple. I became a ghost in my own marriage. I smiled when Brandon spoke, nodded when he rambled about work, and kissed him lightly when he left the house. But behind that mask, I was building a case. I searched our shared credit card statements line by line. Dinners at restaurants I had never visited. Jewelry stores I had never walked into. Hotel charges that appeared on nights when he had told me he was working late. Each transaction screamed louder than the last. And then I saw it, a payment at a baby boutique. Tiny shoes, pastel blankets, little rattles. My stomach turned. My husband had been shopping for Amelia's baby with our money. I printed every statement, slipping them into a folder I kept hidden beneath a stack of old photo albums. Each page was like a blade sharpening in my hand, but I didn't stop there. I went through his phone. Brandon had always been careful, but careful doesn't mean perfect. I found pictures buried in his hidden folder. Amelia's reflection in a cafe window. Amelia's hand holding his on a table. Amelia smiling in front of the very beach house we had once dreamed of buying together. That same beach house he had insisted was too expensive. The one he had told me we could never afford. Apparently it wasn't too expensive for her. I took screenshots of everything, emailed them to myself, and stored them on an encrypted drive. If Brandon thought he could erase me with lies, I would answer with evidence. But the most painful proof came from Amelia herself. One evening I scrolled through her social media again. Among the carefully cropped photos and vague captions, there was one detail she had missed. A reflection. In the glossy glass of a wine bottle, I saw Brandon's face. Blurry but unmistakable. He had been sitting across from her, smiling the way he hadn't smiled at me in months. My hand shook as I saved the image. That was the moment I stopped being a victim. That was the moment I became a hunter. I started tracking his movements. Whenever he claimed to be working late, I followed from a distance. I rented a small car he didn't know about, kept my hair tucked under a cap, and parked down the block. Each time his pattern repeated. A lie, a detour, a rendezvous. One night I saw them together. Brandon kissed Amelia outside a quiet cafe, his hand brushing her stomach as if the child were his prize. She laughed, leaned into him, and for a moment they looked like a happy couple. But I was there watching, unseen, recording every second. The video was shaky, my breath loud in the background, but it was enough. Proof doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be undeniable. And yet, the more evidence I gathered, the more questions clawed at me. Why did that anonymous person send me the first message? Was someone else watching them too? Or was this fate giving me a weapon? I didn't know. But I knew this. My revenge couldn't be reckless. It had to be timed, precise. A strike so devastating that neither Brandon nor Amelia could ever recover. I closed my folder of evidence one night and whispered to myself, this isn't about pain anymore. This is about power. Because when betrayal cuts this deep, silence is weakness. Exposure is survival. The next morning, Brandon kissed my cheek before leaving for another late meeting. I watched him go, then opened my phone. Another message appeared from the unknown number. This time it wasn't a picture. It was an address. The caption read, "Tonight. Come see for yourself." My pulse roared in my ears. Someone wanted me to walk straight into the truth. And I was ready. That message burned in my pocket the entire day. I kept checking my phone, staring at that address, wondering who had sent it. Was it a friend? A stranger? Someone who hated Amelia as much as I was starting to? By the time the sun dipped low, painting the sky in strokes of red and gold, I had already made my decision. I couldn't go alone. Rage can cloud the mind, and if I wanted to win this war, I needed someone at my side. I called my older sister, Danielle. She had always been my shield growing up. The one who stepped in when kids at school mocked me. The one who wiped my tears when my heart first broke. If anyone would understand what I was about to do, it was her. When she answered, her voice was warm, calm. But when I told her everything, when I confessed about Brandon's affair with Amelia, her tone changed. "You mean to tell me," she said slowly, "that while Amelia smiled in your face, stood by your side, and called you her best friend, she was also sleeping with your husband? And now she's flaunting his child as if it's a crown?" "Yes," I whispered, my throat raw. "And now someone's feeding me proof. I need to see it with my own eyes tonight." There was a silence, heavy and sharp, before Danielle replied. "Then you're not going alone. Pack your courage, Alyssa. We're going together." I exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. That night we parked a block away from the address, our car tucked into the shadows. The air was cool, tinged with salt, and the distant crash of waves confirmed what I already suspected. It was near the beach house. The lights inside were soft and golden, spilling through the curtains. Shadows moved across the glass, and each movement twisted the knife deeper in my chest. Danielle grabbed my hand before I could move closer. "Not yet. Don't storm in. Watch. Learn. Let them reveal themselves. Truth doesn't hide forever." Her words anchored me. Together we waited. And then it happened. The front door opened and Brandon stepped out. He laughed. That easy, careless laugh I hadn't heard in months. Amelia followed, glowing under the porch light, her hand resting on her stomach. My stomach clenched. The way he looked at her wasn't casual. It was worship. He leaned down, kissed her forehead, and whispered something that made her laugh again. Then he pulled her close, his arms wrapping protectively around her belly. I snapped picture after picture, my hand steady even though my heart was breaking. Proof. More proof. Evidence no lawyer could twist, no family could ignore. But then the sound of a phone vibrating cut through the night. Brandon pulled his phone from his pocket, checked the screen and frowned. Amelia leaned over his shoulder, curious. His expression darkened. He shoved the phone into his jacket, muttering something I couldn't hear. Danielle squeezed my hand. He knows something. Be careful. When we finally drove away, the weight of silence filled the car. My mind spun with images of Brandon and Amelia laughing, touching, living in that stolen fantasy as though I had never existed. I wanted to scream, to burn the house down, to march inside and end it right there. But Danielle stopped me with one sentence that turned the tide of my fury. Revenge isn't about fire, Alyssa. It's about control. You already have the matches. Now you need the stage. Her words settled deep in me. She was right. I had the pictures, the receipts, the screenshots, the videos. But if I confronted Brandon in private, he would twist it. If I confronted Amelia alone, she would deny it. I needed a place where lies couldn't survive. A stage where their masks would shatter in front of everyone. That night, I opened my laptop and began planning. I searched for upcoming family gatherings, looked at Brandon's work schedule, checked Amelia's calendar through the shared invites she had once trusted me with. And then I saw it, the perfect opportunity. Brandon's parents were hosting an anniversary dinner in 2 weeks. Everyone would be there. His family, Amelia's family, mutual friends, colleagues. It was the kind of night where reputations were polished, where images mattered more than air. I knew then that would be my stage. But as I typed up my plan, one thought refused to leave me. Who had sent me that first message? Who was helping me? Were they protecting me? Or were they playing their own game? Just as I finished laying out my plan, another message appeared on my phone. This one wasn't an address. It was a single line of text. If you want to destroy them completely, wait until the dinner. My hands went cold. Whoever this stranger was, they knew my plan before I even finished writing it. Sleep never came that night. My eyes stayed locked on the ceiling, my mind replaying the scene at the beach house over and over again. Brandon's laugh. Amelia's glow. His arms around her as though the child she carried was his prize. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. And every time I remembered the anonymous message on my phone. If you want to destroy them completely, wait until the dinner. The words pulsed in my chest like a second heartbeat. Whoever this shadow ally was, they knew more than they should. And strangely, I didn't feel fear. I felt power. The following morning, I sat at the kitchen table with Danielle. Coffee cups between us, not a word spoken for the first 10 minutes. Then she leaned forward. So, what's the plan? Her voice was steady, commanding. She was ready to fight, ready to help. I pulled out my notebook. Page after page I had scribbled possibilities. Printing photos, mailing anonymous letters, creating a slideshow that would burn their reputations down to ashes. Each idea darker, more theatrical than the last. But none of them felt enough. Until I thought about the anniversary dinner. They'll be there, I whispered. Together. Surrounded by everyone who believes their lies. And that's where it ends. That's where the masks drop. Danielle nodded slowly. So you need more than pictures. You need a performance. Evidence so sharp, so undeniable, that when the curtain falls, there's no recovering. Yes, I said. My voice didn't tremble this time. No recovering for either of them. Over the next days, I built my arsenal piece by piece. First, the photos from the beach house. Each one cropped carefully, showing Brandon's hand on Amelia's belly, his lips brushing her forehead, his body language screaming intimacy. I edited the images for clarity, sharpened every shadow so there was no room for denial. Next, the financial records. Brandon had been careless with our shared credit cards. Hotel bookings under fake names. Restaurant bills at places he claimed he had never visited. Luxury gifts purchased but never received by me. I printed every statement, highlighted every line. The paper trail glowed like neon arrows pointing straight at his guilt. Then came Amelia. I scrolled back through years of text messages between us, back to the nights when she had sworn she would always protect me, when she claimed sisters before misters. I pulled every screenshot, paired them against her newer messages where she praised Brandon as if he were a saint. The contrast was damning. And then the final touch. The anonymous sender struck again. Another text appeared, this time with a video attached. My hand shook as I pressed play. The screen filled with Brandon's voice, low and hushed, recorded without his knowledge. "You don't understand," he told Amelia. "Once she finds out, it's over. But until then, let her keep believing. She's weak without me. She'll never leave." My lungs locked. Danielle leaned over, listening, her face pale with fury. "He really said that," she whispered. "Yes." My lips curled into a smile. "And soon, everyone else will hear it too." The stage was set. But a performance needs more than evidence. It needs timing, precision, a trigger that no one sees coming until the explosion has already ripped through the room. So I planned it minute by minute. The moment of the toast. The exact second the room's attention would be focused on Brandon's family, his father raising his glass. And then the projector. The photos, the receipts, the recordings all pouring out in front of every single pair of eyes. Danielle insisted on being the one to cue it. "You can't risk fumbling," she said. "You'll be too close. Too emotional. Let me handle the spark. You deliver the fire." It was decided. The closer the dinner came, the sharper my focus became. At work, my colleagues asked why I looked so calm, but inside my blood boiled like a storm. At night, I rehearsed every line of what I might say, every glance I would throw when the truth was finally set free. But always at the edge of my thoughts was that mysterious sender. Who were they? A scorned lover? Another victim of Brandon's lies? Or someone who hated Amelia enough to risk exposing her? The question clawed at me. But in the end, it didn't matter. Their motives weren't my problem. Their messages were my weapon. And soon I would use them. The night before the dinner, Danielle came into my room holding 2 envelopes. "One," she said, "is everything you need for the reveal. Photos, receipts, recordings, all in order. If the tech fails, you read these. 2, she held up the other envelope, is the divorce lawyer's card. Because after tomorrow night, you'll need it." I looked at her, my chest heavy with gratitude and rage. "This isn't just about ending the marriage," I whispered. "It's about ending their story. They wanted to erase me. Tomorrow I erase them." That night I dreamed of the dinner, the clinking glasses, the laughter, the golden lights, and then the silence, heavy and suffocating, as Brandon's voice echoed through the speakers. "She's weak without me. She'll never leave." I woke up gasping, and when I checked my phone, a new message waited. "Tomorrow is not just the dinner. It's the finale. Don't hesitate." The day of the dinner arrived like a thunderstorm I had been watching crawl across the horizon for weeks. I dressed slowly, carefully. A black dress that looked understated from a distance but carried a quiet authority when the light caught its sheen. Simple earrings. No trembling hands. My reflection in the mirror no longer looked like the woman Brandon had mocked in secret. Danielle hovered in the doorway, clutching her purse like it held a bomb. "Are you ready?" "No," I answered. "But I will be." We drove in silence. Every streetlight felt like a countdown, every red glow daring me to back out. But I didn't. I couldn't. The restaurant shimmered with golden lights strung from the ceiling. Chandeliers threw reflections across crystal glasses already waiting for wine. Laughter spilled out of the entrance like smoke. Inside, Brandon's family bustled with energy, their voices rising in excitement. It wasn't just a dinner. It was a performance of perfection, his family's favorite show. And in the center of it all, Brandon stood with Amelia by his side. I froze in the doorway, the air knocked out of me. She was glowing not just from pregnancy but from audacity. She wore a soft blue dress that clung to her figure, her hand brushing Brandon's arm as though she owned him, as though she had won. And the worst part? His smile matched hers. Danielle's hand squeezed my elbow. "Don't give them the satisfaction. Remember why you're here." I swallowed the bile in my throat and forced a smile, stepping forward into the lion's den. The first complication came before I even reached the table. Brandon's mother intercepted me with her arms wide open. "Celia, you look beautiful tonight." Her voice rang too loud, her embrace too tight. When she pulled back, her eyes flickered, just for a second, toward Amelia. Then back to me. A chill rushed down my spine. Did she know? Did they all know? I shook the thought off, but unease gnawed at me. If his family was aware, if they had already chosen sides, the reveal would strike differently. Not as shock, as confirmation. And confirmation meant sympathy could shift toward him. We sat. Plates of food arrived. The clinking of silverware filled the air. Danielle leaned close, whispering, "Stay calm. Just a little longer." My fingers tapped restlessly under the table. The plan was set for the toast. Just minutes away. But then disaster. The projector. Danielle slipped out to check the equipment while the chatter swelled around us. When she returned, her face was pale, lips pressed tight. "What?" I mouthed. She leaned in, her whisper like a knife to my chest. "It's not working. Someone cut the connection. Everything's wiped." The room swayed. My heart stopped. "What do you mean wiped?" "I mean," Danielle hissed. "The USB, the backup, everything. Gone." Panic thundered in my chest. Without the projector, the evidence wouldn't hit like a bomb. It would land like scraps. Crumpled paper against the shine of their orchestrated perfection. And then, as if to twist the blade deeper, Brandon stood up. He tapped his glass, his smile wide and dazzling. The room hushed. Every pair of eyes turned to him. "My family," he said warmly. "Tonight is about gratitude. About the people who hold us together. About love." His hand brushed Amelia's. My pulse pounded. The blood roared in my ears. He was stealing my moment, turning the stage into his own spotlight. I felt Danielle's hand grip mine under the table, but I didn't look at her. I looked at him. At Amelia. At the performance of lies unraveling in front of me. And then deep inside the panic, I felt something colder. Sharper. If they thought wiping the files could silence me, they underestimated the most dangerous weapon I had left, my voice. I stood. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound slicing through the air like a blade. Gasps rippled across the room. Brandon's smile faltered. "Celia?" he asked, his tone uncertain now. I raised my glass, my hand steady. "Yes. Tonight is about gratitude. About family. About love. But it's also about truth." The room froze. Danielle pressed the envelope into my palm under the table, her eyes urging me forward. The projector might have been gone. But the paper, the recordings, my voice, they were still mine. I looked around the table at Brandon's family, at Amelia's smug smile, at the crowd expecting harmony. Then I pulled the first photo from the envelope and held it high under the chandelier light. The picture of Brandon, lips pressed against Amelia's forehead. The silence that followed was deafening. And the night had only begun. The photo in my hand trembled only because the chandelier light bounced against it. Not because of me. My fingers were steady, my heartbeat sharp and controlled. "What is this?" Brandon's mother whispered, her fork clattering against porcelain. Amelia gave a breathy laugh, too loud, too fake. "Oh, come on. That could be anyone." I cut her off. "Anyone? With your dress. With your hand on his chest. With his lips on your skin. Really, Amelia?" Gasps spread like wildfire. The photograph passed from hand to hand. Aunts squinted, uncles muttered, cousins exchanged wide-eyed looks. Brandon's father's jaw locked tight, his eyes narrowing on his son. Brandon stood, his face flushed scarlet. "Celia, sit down. This is not the time." "Oh, it's exactly the time," I answered. My voice carried louder than his. "Because for months you've mocked me, lied to me, dragged me into a play where everyone else knew the lines but me. But tonight," I lifted the next page from the envelope. "Tonight the script changes. The second piece. A receipt." Brandon's handwriting sprawled across the signature line. A prenatal appointment. Amelia's name printed clearly. Paid with our joint account. The room cracked open with shock. "Brandon!" his mother shrieked, clutching the paper. "You used their money?" His eyes darted like a trapped animal. It's not what it looks like." But the more he spoke, the smaller his voice became. And then came the recording. Danielle, my lifeline, rose beside me. She held her phone high and pressed play. Brandon's voice filled the room. Unmistakable, undeniable. "You're all I think about, Amelia. Once she's out of the picture, we'll finally be free. The sound echoed through the restaurant, bouncing off golden chandeliers, spilling across the linen tablecloths, sinking into every stunned ear. Amelia's face crumbled. Her hand slipped from Brandon's arm. "No," she whispered. "You said, you promised." Brandon lunged forward trying to grab the phone, but Danielle snapped her hand back. The family surged between us, their voices clashing in a rising storm. Brandon's father slammed his fist on the table. "Enough." His eyes cut into his son like knives. "You humiliate your wife, your family, and now you expect us to clean your mess?" Brandon sputtered. "Dad, please." "No," his father spat. "Don't call me that." The room fell silent, the kind of silence that burns. I drew in a slow breath, steadying the tremor of triumph in my chest. Then I set down the final card, the ultrasound photo, tucked neatly into the folder. "Do you know what this is?" I asked, holding it up. Brandon's eyes widened in horror. "This," I said, my voice low but razor-sharp, "is the evidence you thought you buried. Evidence that not only are you a liar, but you are a coward who hides behind deceit. And tonight, in front of everyone who ever thought you were honorable, the truth is undeniable." I placed the photo on the table like the last move in a chess match. Chaos erupted. Relatives shouted, some at Brandon, some at Amelia, others at each other. Chairs scraped back. Glasses toppled. A cousin stormed out, muttering curses under his breath. Amelia covered her face with her hands, shaking. "And Brandon?" He collapsed into his chair, his body folding inward. His perfect posture gone, his polished smile destroyed. "You ruined me," he hissed at me, his voice shaking. I leaned closer, letting only him hear my reply. "No, Brandon. You ruined yourself. I just turned on the lights." But just as victory pulsed through me, another complication snapped into focus. One of his brothers, standing at the far end of the table, glared at me with pure venom. "You think this makes you strong, Celia? All it does is drag this family into scandal. Do you understand what you've done?" The room stilled again, eyes flicking between us. For a moment I felt the weight shift, not in Brandon's favor but against me, as though exposing the truth was dirtier than the lies themselves. But I didn't flinch. I held his brother's gaze, my chin lifting higher. "I understand perfectly," I said, each word slow and deliberate, "because lies only survive in silence. And tonight silence died." The table was split, half glaring at Brandon, half glaring at me. Amelia sobbing quietly, Brandon crumbling in shame. But as I stood in the center of the storm with every eye on me, I realized the night wasn't over. The reveal had shattered him. Now came the fallout. The air inside the restaurant had shifted. It no longer smelled of roasted lamb and buttered bread. It smelled of iron, thick, metallic, like the taste of blood after biting your tongue. Brandon sat slumped, his once confident shoulders curved in on themselves. Amelia dabbed at her cheeks with trembling fingers, whispering apologies to no one in particular. And then the dam broke. Brandon's aunt rose from her seat, her napkin fluttering to the floor. "How dare you?" she cried, pointing at Amelia. "You come into our family, eat at our table, pretend to be one of us, and all the while," her voice cracked into a sob, "all the while, you were destroying everything." Amelia tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. Her face crumpled, and she looked at Brandon like a lifeline. But he refused to meet her eyes. His mother's voice cut sharp through the noise. "I warned you, Brandon. I told you Celia deserved better. But you thought you were clever, didn't you? You thought you could play both sides forever." She shoved the ultrasound photo back at him like a dagger. "Look at this. Look at what you've done." Brandon's lips trembled. "Mom, please. Don't you dare please me," she snapped. Across the table, his father's hand trembled with barely controlled rage. "You spent the family's name. You spent her trust. And you spent our money." He turned to me, his jaw clenched. "Celia, I don't know how to fix this. But I promise you, this will not be forgotten." I let his words hang. They weren't an apology. They were a vow, but not one made to me. They were for him, for the family's reputation. I smiled bitterly. Reputation. That's all any of you care about. Not loyalty. Not honesty. Just the image. A cousin, tall, broad-shouldered, always smug, stood and slammed his hand against the table. She's right. His eyes locked on Brandon. You dragged us all through the mud. Everyone will know. You've humiliated every single one of us. Brandon shot to his feet, desperation breaking his voice. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Then how was it supposed to happen? I demanded. My voice shook the silence that followed. Were you going to keep lying until I lost myself completely? Until Amelia showed up one day with a child and you expected me to raise it as my own? Or did you think I'd just stay quiet because that's what a good wife does? His silence answered me. Amelia finally found her voice shrill and broken. I didn't ask for this. He told me he loved me. He told me he was leaving her. He said. Her eyes darted toward me, pleading. He said you were cold. That you didn't understand him. A hiss of whispers traveled the length of the table. I felt the fire rise in me. Cold. My laugh sliced the air. Cold is how I survived while you two warmed each other with stolen nights. Cold is what kept me standing while you buried me under your lies. If cold is survival, then yes, I was ice. Amelia recoiled, burying her face in her hands. And then the unthinkable happened. Brandon's younger brother, quiet, usually invisible, stood slowly. His voice shook, but the words landed heavy. Celia isn't lying. I saw them. At the clinic. I was there the day he paid for the appointment. Every head turned. Brandon's eyes bulged with fury. You traitor. No, his brother said, his voice steadier now. You betrayed her. You betrayed us. And I won't stay silent anymore. Gasps filled the air. Even his parents fell into stunned silence. For the first time that night, I felt the tide turning completely toward me. Not pity, no, not that, but respect. A recognition that I hadn't fabricated this spectacle. Brandon lunged at his brother, his hand curling into a fist. But his father stepped between them, his voice thunderous. Enough! Sit down! Brandon froze, his rage shattering against his father's command. I seized the silence. I stepped forward, planting myself at the head of the table. My voice carried, calm but firm. You called me jealous. You called me crazy. You let her call me names, mock me, laugh at me. And tonight you wanted to play the perfect man. But I've burned your mask. Now everyone sees the truth. No one argued. No one dared. The restaurant staff stood at the edges of the room, eyes wide, uncertain whether to intervene or flee. Guests at neighboring tables whispered and gawked, their phones flashing discreetly. The scandal had spilled far beyond family, and Brandon knew it. His face drained of color as he realized what tomorrow's gossip would look like. I leaned closer, my words meant only for him, though the whole room leaned in to hear. This isn't just about me, Brandon. This is about every lie you told, every hand you shook, every promise you broke. Tonight, the empire you built on deceit comes crashing down. The fallout wasn't finished. His parents had turned. His brother had spoken. Amelia was broken. The restaurant buzzed with whispers that would become headlines by dawn. But this wasn't the end. The night would not close with chaos. The night would close with consequences. Morning did not bring peace. It brought headlines. When I woke, sunlight leaked through the blinds in fractured lines across my bed. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a relentless stream of messages, missed calls, and notifications. For a moment I hesitated. I knew what awaited me. Still I reached for it. The first thing I saw was a photo. Brandon's face, pale and wide-eyed. Frozen in the exact moment his brother exposed him. The caption burned. Family dinner turns into scandal, local businessman confronted with affair. My stomach clenched, but not from regret. No, it was relief. The truth was not just whispered within one room anymore. It was public. I scrolled article after article, each one piecing together fragments of last night. Some speculated about Amelia's pregnancy. Others wrote about Brandon's betrayal of both wife and family. A few even praised my composure. But the tone was the same everywhere. Brandon had fallen. The phone rang again. This time it was his mother. I let it ring. Then my sister called. My lawyer. A journalist. Even my boss. The world, it seemed, was no longer interested in Brandon's image. They were interested in mine. I pulled myself from the bed, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what came next. At noon my sister arrived, unannounced but expected. She closed the door behind her, her eyes wide. "Celia," she whispered, "you're everywhere. They're calling you brave, fearless, ruthless. He's ruined, and you?" Her lips curled into the faintest smile. "You look like the winner." I exhaled, a sound between a laugh and a sigh. "Do I feel like it, though?" She sat across from me. "You will. Trust me. Right now you're in shock. But this is justice." Across town, Brandon wasn't hiding. He was scrambling. My cousin texted me a screenshot. Brandon standing outside his office, reporters swarming him like vultures. His face was red, his hand shielding the cameras, Amelia by his side, mascara streaking her cheeks. His company had issued a statement already, cold, detached, but clear. They had no comment regarding the personal matters of Mr. Hayes. Translation: he was alone. By late afternoon, lawyers were calling. My attorney's voice was crisp, controlled. "Celia, we move forward now. His credibility is gone. His leverage is gone. Everything he thought he controlled is in your hands." For the first time in months, my shoulders eased. The chains of doubt had slipped away. But the consequences weren't only professional. My sister opened her phone and showed me messages from friends, distant relatives, even strangers. Some expressed outrage, others sympathy. But the common thread was this: people were watching. People were on my side. At dinner, I scrolled through social media again. A trending hashtag. #JusticeForCelia. Photos of me standing in the restaurant circulated. Chin lifted, eyes sharp, the ultrasound photo in my hand. Someone had captioned it, "She turned betrayal into power." Brandon, meanwhile, was being dissected. Memes mocked him, journalists scrutinized him, and Amelia's name trended with his. Their affair, once secret, was now everyone's entertainment. And yet, as I sat there, a flicker of unease sparked inside me. The fallout was vast, yes, but not yet final. Brandon wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat quietly. I could almost hear his voice in my mind, seething, planning, vowing revenge of his own. My sister caught my expression. "What is it?" "He's not finished," I whispered. "He's cornered, humiliated, stripped of everything he cared about. But men like Brandon? They don't go down without clawing at whatever's left." Her hand covered mine, firm and steady. "Then you stay ready, because you've already beaten him where it hurts most. He has nothing left to take from you." But she was wrong. He had one thing left. His rage. And I knew he would use it. That night my phone rang again. This time it was him. The name Brandon lit the screen. I stared at it, my heart pounding, my fingers hovering. For a moment I wondered, would I answer? Would I give him the chance to scream, to beg, to threaten? I let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. On the 4th I answered. "Celia." His voice rasped, broken but burning. "You think you've won. But this isn't over." His words weren't desperation. They were a warning. A promise that the fallout wasn't the finale. The battle was mine. But the war might not be finished. His words echoed in my ear long after the call ended. "This isn't over." I sat there in silence, the phone heavy in my hand, the kitchen clock ticking like a drumbeat. For years, Brandon had dictated the rhythm of my life. When to speak, when to shrink, when to forgive. Now his voice was only noise. A storm already fading. The next morning, I walked into my lawyer's office with my head high and my shoulders square. The world outside buzzed with whispers, but inside those walls, everything was clear. Papers were signed, property divided, accounts unfrozen. The man who once called me jealous was now fighting over scraps. When I left, the sunlight hit me differently. It wasn't blinding. It wasn't harsh. It was warm, like a hand resting on my back, guiding me forward. I returned to the places Brandon had tainted with his betrayal. The cafe where he used to mock my silly dreams. The park where we posed for photos pretending to be happy. The restaurant where his lies had unraveled in front of everyone. And in each place I left a piece of him behind. I no longer carried his shadow with me. People stopped me on the street. Some whispered, "You're brave." Others said, "You gave women like us hope." One even pressed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for proving we are not powerless." It struck me then. This was bigger than Brandon, bigger than Amelia, bigger than the scandal. It was about survival, about reclaiming my voice when someone tried to silence it. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of wine. My phone buzzed again. Messages from strangers, hundreds of them. Women telling me their stories. Wives, girlfriends, even daughters. Stories of lies, of betrayal, of manipulation. And every single one ended with the same note. Because of you, I will not stay silent anymore. I cried then, not because of loss, but because of the weight of what I had gained. My revenge was not only personal, it was universal. As for Brandon, his company dissolved under the pressure of scandal. Amelia vanished from social media. Her perfect photos deleted one by one. He sold his car, his watch, even his shares, but not even money could buy back his name. And yet, I never needed to destroy him completely. He did that himself. All I did was open the curtain and let the world see. 1 week later, I stood in front of the mirror. Not the woman he belittled. Not the wife he betrayed. Not the shadow he thought he owned. I was me. Celia. Stronger. Sharper. Free. I adjusted my blazer, picked up my keys, and stepped into the world. Not as his wife, not as his victim, but as the woman who survived him and thrived beyond him. And if you are listening to me now, know this. Revenge is not about cruelty. It is not about hurting back harder. Revenge is about reclaiming power. It is about refusing to let betrayal define you. When someone laughs at your dreams, dares to erase your worth, or calls you jealous for daring to ask for respect, remember me. Remember what happens when you stop whispering and start exposing. Because betrayal might break the heart. But revenge rebuilds the soul. If my story kept you here until the end, it means you know how sharp betrayal cuts, and how powerful justice feels when you take it back. Share this story. Leave your voice in the comments. And if you believe no woman should ever be silenced by lies, subscribe for more stories of truth, of power, and of revenge. Because somewhere right now, another woman is listening in silence. And maybe your words will be the one thing that tells her, you are not alone.